Let's do it. It's go time.
Welcome to Go Time, your source for wide-ranging discussions from all around the Go community. Check us out on the web at gotime.fm. There you'll find lists of recommended and popular episodes, unpopular opinion clips, and a request form, so you can let us know what you want to hear about on the pod. Big thanks to our partners at Fly.io. Over 3 million apps have launched on Fly. Deploy yours in 5 minutes. Learn how at Fly.io. Okay, here we go.
What's up, Gophers? You know we're big fans of Fly.io, and I'm here with Kurt Mackey, co-founder and CEO of Fly. Kurt, we've had some conversations, and I've heard you say that public clouds suck. What is your personal lens into public clouds sucking, and how does Fly not suck?
All right, so public clouds suck. I actually think most ways of hosting stuff on the internet sucks. And I have a lot of theories about why this is, but it almost doesn't matter. The reality is if like I've built a new app for like generating sandwich recipes because my family's just into specific types of sandwiches that use Braunschweiger as a component, for example. And then I want to like put that somewhere. You go to AWS and it's harder than just going and getting like a dedicated server from Hetzner. It's actually like more complicated to figure out how to deploy my dumb sandwich app on top of AWS because it's not built for me as a developer to be productive with. It's built for other people. It's built for platform teams to kind of build the infrastructure of their dreams and hopefully create a new UX that's useful for the developers that they work with. And again, I feel like every time I talk about this, it's like I'm just too impatient. I don't particularly want to go figure so many things out purely to put my sandwich app in front of people. And I don't particularly want to have to go talk to a platform team once my sandwich app becomes a huge startup and IPOs and I have to like do a deploy. I kind of feel like all that stuff should just work for me without me having to go ask permission or talk to anyone else. And so this has informed a lot of how we built Fly. Like we're still a public cloud. We still have a lot of very similar low-level primitives as the bigger guys. But in general, they're designed to be used directly by developers. They're not built for a platform team to kind of cobble together. They're designed to be useful quickly for developers. One of the ways we've thought about this is if you can turn a very difficult problem into a 2-hour problem, people will build much more interesting types of apps. And so this is why we've done things like made it easy to run an app multi-region. Most companies don't run multi-region apps on public clouds because it's functionally impossible to do without a huge amount of upfront effort. It's why we've made things like the virtual machine primitives behind just a simple API. Most people don't do like code sandboxing or their own virtualization because it's just not really easy. There's just no path to that on top of the clouds. So in general, like I feel like, and it's not really fair of me to say public clouds suck because they were built for a different time. If you build one of these things starting in 2007, the world's very different than it is right now. And so a lot of what I'm saying, I think, is that public clouds are kind of old. And there's a new version of public clouds that we should all be building on top of that are definitely going to make me as a developer much happier than I was like 5 or 6 years ago when I was kind of stuck in this quagmire.
So AWS was built for a different era, a different cloud era, and Fly, a public cloud, yes, but a public cloud built for developers who ship. That's a difference. And we here at Changelog are developers who ship. So you should trust us. Try out Fly, Fly.io. Over 3 million apps, that includes us, have launched on Fly. They leverage the global Anycast load balancing, the zero config private networking, hardware isolation, instant WireGuard VPN connections with push button deployments, scaling to thousands of instances. This is the cloud you want. Check it out, Fly.io. Again, Fly.io.
Hello and welcome to Go Time. I'm really, really excited for our episode today. Today we are joined by 3 wonderful guests who are going to be talking a little bit about the changes in leadership that have happened recently on the Go team. So I'm joined by Russ Cox, who joined the Go team all the way in 2008 and has been the Go project tech lead since 2012. And he's going to be talking a little bit about kind of stepping down from that tech lead position and handing over the reins to the wonderful Austin Clements, who's also with us. So very excited about that. So they're going to be talking a little bit about what this transition means for them, how they're thinking about taking over the Go team and bringing it into the kind of new chapter of Go. We are also joined by Cherry, who is stepping into Austin's previous role as tech lead of the Go core, so an extremely important part of the Go ecosystem. So really lucky to have her with us today as well. So without further ado, Russ, hello. Welcome to the show again. I'm very excited to have you on. How are you?
Thank you. It's great to be back. I'm doing pretty well today, and I'm just excited to be here.
And it seems you're taking to stepping down very well, given that you said that you had a nice little sleep in today. So aren't you lucky?
I'm actually on vacation today, but I made an exception to come in and hang out with you for an hour. So I'm excited to be here.
I'm very, very, very pleased to have you and very blessed that you've spent your time off with Go Time. Next up, we have Austin. Hello, Austin. So you joined the Go team at Google about 10 years ago. So
just about,
you've been around for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you.
We're excited to have you on and kind of dig in a little more. And then finally, but certainly not least, Cherry, how are you?
Good. How are you today?
I'm excited to get to know you both. I have not had the pleasure of getting to know Austin nor Cherry very deeply. So we're going to be talking a little bit about you as just human beings as well as gophers today. So given that kind of I don't know you all that well, and we want to make sure that all our lovely gophers know you even better now you're in these critical roles, I'd love to give you both a little bit of time to kind of talk about kind of you, how you got into Go, how you found yourself in the position today. Interesting hobbies and fun facts are welcome if you would like. So I'll kind of leave it to you to how you'd like to introduce yourself to the Go Time listeners. Maybe we'll start with you, Cherry.
I joined the Go team and Google in 2016. And yeah, since then I've been mostly working on compiler, runtime, and toolchain related things. I've been working on other things, but mostly compiler, runtime related. And I'm now being the tech lead of the Go core team for about 2 weeks. Before that, I was a graduate student at Brown University studying chemistry. And how I brought to Go. When I was at school, a friend of mine actually, at the time I liked programming basically as a hobby and playing with codes for fun. And I like to play with compilers and operating systems. So I spent some time hacking around the Plan 9 compiler actually and the Plan 9 operating system. And a friend of mine told me that there was a new programming language called Go, and they have quite a bit of relationship to Plan 9. You must find that interesting. And okay, so I tried it. It was actually very interesting. It's actually a pretty cool language, and was pretty much convinced that I like Go. And he was right, and I did like Go. So, and he also convinced me to actually work in Google and in the Go team. So pretty much that's brought me here.
Oh my gosh. So we all need to be very thankful then. This friend was a very good friend is what I'm hearing.
Yes, he is.
How about you, Austin?
Hi. To answer what brought me to Go, I actually have to go back almost 20 years ago. So I actually met Russ about 20 years ago when we worked together in grad school at MIT. Then in 2009, I was frantically scrambling to look for an internship just because I hadn't been on top of things. And Russ was already working at Google on Go at that point and was like, hey, we're working on something cool. Let's chat. This was before Go was even publicly announced. So I met up with Russ and he sort of described the core language design and the philosophy. And from that point, I was kind of hooked. Yeah, so then after that internship, I continued with my PhD and then eventually about 10 years ago started at Google and started right on the Go team. And I've been there ever since. And yeah, then I became the tech lead of the Go compiler and runtime in 2017. And I'm now handing on the reins. So I started programming when I was in first grade. I love coding. I love programming languages. I love how different programming languages shape your thinking in different ways. I taught Scheme at MIT for several years, and I just loved seeing sort of the the spark of new understanding in students, many of whom had already been programming in C-like languages for years. But this was just like a new way of thinking to them. And Go sort of brings a lot of that familiarity and practicality, but also pushes you into newer and better and like more structured ways of thinking. And so I just, when Russ introduced me to it, I'm like, this is actually really fantastic. Outside of programming, I love matcha and have been perfecting my matcha latte skills for over a decade now. I actually just returned from a visit to Japan where I tried to have at least 2 different forms of matcha each day. I also love smart home stuff. I went a little wild with it at the start of the pandemic, and now I have a complete mess of networks on my hands that I really need to detangle at some point. And I love mid-century architecture. We live in an MCM house and just finished a big renovation that we're very proud of.
It's awesome. So I've got a bone to pick with you. I got matcha powder the other day, and I love matcha lattes, but I live in New York and lattes are very expensive, and I don't have the money, I'm going to be candid with you, to be buying myself matcha lattes every day. Like, I don't have that luxury in life quite yet. I'm aspiring, but I'm not quite there yet. So I got matcha powder from Whole Foods, and I brought it back, and I, put a little bit of hot water and, whisk it up, put it in my milk. It tasted repulsive. It was not the matcha latte that I was expecting. So I'm gonna have to pick your brains on the ideal matcha latte. And I'm sure other Go Time listeners are also matcha drinkers who struggle with the same things I do, let alone Go compiler issues. Come on, matcha mixture, more important.
So there are a few really important things.
Okay.
One is that you have to start with a good matcha powder. There is a huge range. If you Google around, you will even find websites with like reviews and tasting notes. It's like wine. There's a huge range. Even the like really high quality matcha, there are different brands and sources of it have different flavors. So you also have to find the right matcha for you. How you prepare it is important. I highly recommend passing it through a sieve, because you don't want clumps in it. So like I always sieve my matcha powder first. And then when you whisk it, it's really important to use the right tool. So you want to use a chasen, which is that bamboo whisk with a whole bunch of tines, because it's such a fine powder that it can really easily like reform clumps in the water. And when you whisk it, you want to whisk back and forth in like a W-shaped motion, not in a circular motion. And you can generally tell if you've got a good matcha powder because it will be like a viridian green. And you should get a thin layer of froth across the entire bowl. And then the final thing that's important is somehow sweetening it. So straight matcha powder is usually pretty bitter. I've had ones that are less bitter, but usually it's fairly bitter. But if you sweeten it a little bit, then that actually really brings out the subtler flavors and tamps down the bitter flavor. So you can either add a bit of simple syrup directly to your matcha, or it's pretty common in Japan, like Japanese tea ceremonies, to drink the matcha straight, but to have like a red bean paste or something very sweet next to it that you sort of eat at the same time. So those are my tips.
I appreciate it. Not only a technical leader, but a matcha leader to lead the Go community into better matcha. I'm ready. So what I'm hearing is that I need to make Austin's amazing matcha, and then none of you are going to be able to see this, but maybe you will if you look at the beautiful picture of Cherry. But Cherry has the most gorgeous green hair. So what I'm hearing is that I have to dye my hair green and drink the beautiful matcha that Austin has supported. It's a bright future for the Go community. I'm very excited about this. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you kind of indulging me, getting to know you a little bit more. Russ, I'm going to talk to you a little bit now. I want to understand a little bit about your decision to step down from tech leading Go, and then the subsequent decision to kind of bring Austin in, bring Cherry into Austin's old role. I'd love to kind of hear a little bit about how that happened and what got us kind of to here, where it's been, a month or so, maybe a little longer, depending on when this episode is aired, in these new roles that you've all taken on.
I mean, Austin won the matcha contest, and that was it.
That was it.
More seriously, anytime you're in a role, right, you want to be thinking about who's going to take over that role if you can't do it anymore? And so we had private discussions inside Google for many years about, for everyone on the team, like who would take over if that person had to leave or just for whatever reason needed to do something else. And so, I've always thought that Austin should be the next person to lead it. Obviously we go back very far, but Austin, I think, has a lot of the same sort of sensibilities that we were trying to do for Go kind of baked into the way they approach computing and Go and just sort of technology in general. And so it feels like a very good fit. It always felt like a very good fit to me. I mean, that's why I recruited Austin to the project to begin with. And so like it was always clear to me that I'd want Austin to take over eventually. And so then, at some point I realized like not only were they the right person to take over, but they're ready to take over, and it'd be good for the Go project to make that switch. I've been the Go tech lead officially for 12 years. For some number of years before that, Rob used to introduce me and him as co-tech leads. I didn't notice when he started doing that. And then I've been working on Go itself for 16 years, right? So, 12 years is a long time to have one leader who's sort of in charge of sort of setting the tone and the direction of something. And, things can get stale with any time you have a leader for a long time. And, do I want to be doing this in another 12 years? Like, probably that's not good for me or the project. And by then, Austin and Cherry will probably have gotten bored and moved on to something else that, gives them a broader role. So, it makes sense for me to step back and let them step forward and take on this bigger role and sort of grow their strengths, and I can step back, and be around and, be here to make sure that anything they need, I can provide and, just sort of be there to support. I also think it's good for the Go community. In the early days of Go, we had, Rob leading, and there was a tiny bit of a kind of personality cult that built up around Rob as the leader. And then Rob handed things to me. And I think the same thing happened over Rob was maybe the leader for like 3 years. And then I think the same thing happened to me over the last 12 years, that people think like, there are things that only I can do, or like my idea of what the right way is the only way to do something. And I think that's really unfortunate, right? That's not the way that you want a technical project to go. And, it's not just in Go. You see this, I'm not going to name any names, but you totally see this in other projects where people have been leading for decades. And in some projects, they've been leading for decades, and you look at what they're doing now and you think, you're kind of missing the boat on some newer things. And so, I don't want that to happen to Go. I don't want that to happen to me. I think that it makes sense to, have new perspectives and new leaders from time to time. And then the other thing that's important to remember is that being the tech lead is really kind of like a service role. It really is that you're serving a large group of other people. And it's not just an honorary title and then you sort of go about your day. And so it's, it's a lot of work. And I think that it makes sense for, different people to take different approaches to that role and, just sort of have a new leader in that role to serve the community and the team differently and, see how that goes.
So you talk a little bit about kind of different leaders bringing different things, a kind of notable shift in the community and perhaps ways of thinking about Go, both technically and from that community people perspective. Austin, I'd love to talk to you a little bit about, first and foremost, for those who don't really understand, what is a tech lead for the Go team? Like, what does that even mean as a role? I would love to hear a little bit about that, but also a little bit about how you personally see the role of tech leading the Go language.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really love Russ's description as a tech leader as a service role. I believe that tech leads are sort of the glue that holds a project together. I believe deeply that great work comes from many different perspectives, and it's a tech lead's job to facilitate all those perspectives and bring them together and put them into a coherent whole. If you were to just take every idea that came, you would wind up with complete nonsense. But if you only take your own ideas, then you're also not doing a good service. So, as a project leader, as a tech leader, that gives me a very broad perspective. And I consider it an important responsibility to personally focus on problems that require very cross-cutting solutions because I have that particular perspective. But I don't necessarily have the deep perspective into every area that the rest of the team does. And so it's important for others to focus on problems that require really deep solutions in their areas of perspective. And both are very important. And I consider it sort of a big part of my role to bring those together and to make sure that those perspectives are heard and seen and taken advantage of and again, put together into a coherent whole.
And as you're thinking about the like impact you would like to have, both technically, but also on kind of the Go community, what are some kind of top of mind things? I know this is a very new role that you're stepping into, but just initial thoughts around like changes you would like to see, the way you're kind of thinking about your imprint on the Go community, and approaching stepping in and making it your own. Like, you know, I apologize, Russ, like this is no longer Russ's role, like this is yours, and like it's really exciting, and I think it's an opportunity for a positive, like leaving a wonderful chapter, moving on to a new chapter of Go leadership, as kind of Russ, you characterized. There's these chapters of leadership as kind of you stepped into the role and now Austin, etc. I'd love to hear a little bit about that, like your goals, how you're thinking about it, your hopes, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do want to first say that stability is a very important part of Go. So I have no plans to come in and completely shake up the house. So yeah, in terms of what's sort of top of mind for me and what I'm thinking about, you know, Go, we like to say that Go is about engineering at scale and engineering for scale. One of the things that was really top of mind for me coming into this role is how we can scale the engineering of Go itself without losing its like minimalism and approachability. There are both technical and people aspects to this. For example, like on the more technical side, we're starting to see dividends from the new diagnostic strategy that Michael Knischek has been driving. There, we basically said there's like no way that we on the Go team at Google have the resources to build all of the runtime diagnostics tools that people want and need. So how can we create a platform on which people can build their own tools? It's a very technical approach to sort of scaling the engineering of Go itself. And then there are a lot of people processes, like I'm thinking a lot about how we better communicate with and leverage the amazing developer community that we have. You know, how can we improve our transparency? How can we better accept contributions? How can we keep people around better? How can we create long-term stability in the Go project while scaling up the engineering of Go itself? And another thing that's really top of mind for me right now is on sort of the engineering at scale perspective. One of the sort of founding principles of Go was that programming should be fun. And while I do strongly believe that programming in Go is still fun, I also think that one of the costs of Go stability has been that there's been a lot of experimentation in a lot of other languages. And there are places where I think other languages have been finding places that they can do better, that they become more productive, they become more fun. And I think that, you know, Go has never been about cargo culting from other languages, but I think we can learn a lot from sort of the movement that other languages have had in recent years. Go sort of started the development of more systems programming languages, of sort of more exploration in what can a programming language be. And I think it's fantastic that we have both, you know, sort of Go on the more stable end of the spectrum, and also other languages that are willing to just like go wild and explore things. And I think we can learn from some of the best ideas in there and bring them back into Go and sort of, you know, keep things fresh, right? Because the bar for what makes programming fun moves. It's not in one place. The bar for what makes programming productive moves. And I think we need to keep up with that, and we need to be learning and exploring. And then on engineering for scale, you know, I've been thinking about how to engineer systems that scale for a long time. Like my PhD thesis was on the formal relationship between software API design interfaces and multi-core scalability. And I've been thinking a lot about Go's approach to performance recently. We spent many years basically trying to float all boats, and we're kind of running out of opportunities on that front. Obviously, we're going to keep trying to do that, but it gets harder and harder over time. So I think we're sort of moving into a new phase with performance and scalability of Go, where we're going to have to give people more mechanisms to do explicit performance engineering. But that said, I also deeply believe that performance engineering in Go needs to be incremental and composable. So engineers can trade higher engineering cost for lower resource cost just where it matters, without having to pay the high engineering cost everywhere. And so that they don't have to be constantly thinking about the effects of performance optimizations as a system evolves. So like some of our experiments with memory allocation are actually a great example of this. A few years ago, we put out this experimental support for explicit arena-based allocation. We never moved forward with that because it really wasn't composable. You had to be pretty careful to keep track of what was allocated how, and the details of that tended to leak out of APIs and libraries that use this. So that was kind of incremental, but it really wasn't composable. And for example, we're now experimenting with a new variation of arena allocation that is composable, that works on these principles, so that an engineer doing performance optimization can drop in a few annotations in the code and then not really worry about it again for a while. And it's possible to do it wrong. Otherwise, we could just do it automatically. But if you do it wrong or your system changes over time, it degrades gracefully, which also means that you can revisit those annotations as your software changes, but you only have to do it from time to time. And hopefully the tooling can tell you like, you probably need to look at this again and figure out what's going on here. So those are sort of, there are a lot of things at the top of my mind, but those are a few of the things that I've been thinking a lot about.
What's going on, Gophers? Adam here, talking to you with a new friend of mine. You know this person, Matt Boyle. He's been on the show several times, a big fan of Go Time. And Matt is also a trainer at Bite Size Go. And Matt has a course coming out called Mastering Go with GoLand. And that introduces our new sponsor, JetBrains, and their awesome IDE called GoLand. It is for Go developers, and Matt loves this editor. He's featuring it in this course. You can check it out at bitesizego.com/GoLand. But Matt, what are 5 things about GoLand that you just love, that you can't live without?
So I think the 5 features of GoLand that I could not live without and I always miss when I'm not using it is firstly the debugger. I think the debugging experience in IntelliJ products is perfect. Perfect. Quite a stretch, but I genuinely think it's for me at least, it's perfect. It's exactly what I want from a debugger. The second thing is having a terminal built in right there. I think most IDEs have this these days, but it's still like a really powerful and useful thing to have. The third one would be the ability to kind of connect the database from within my IDE. So this is really useful for building full stack apps, for debugging, and effectively I can do near enough everything I need to do to build an app from front end to back end without leaving GoLand, which is incredible. Fourth would be some of the refactoring tools. So we'll go through this in my course, but the ability to kind of extract code and turn it into a new function to automatically implement interfaces is something that's really useful. And then finally, once you get familiar with it, GoLand has this ability to sort of like fuzzy search and move between files, but using your keyboard. And I use that a lot because I use like very strict package and file naming for my stuff. I always know where things roughly live. And so being able to press Command-Shift-O on Mac and just start typing roughly the name of a file, I can just jump super quickly between different things, which is really, really useful for getting a lot of stuff done really quickly.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing, Matt. So Matt has this awesome course. It is free. Go to bitesizego.com/GoLand. This is a free course. It is called Mastering Go with GoLand, and you will get a complimentary 1-year GoLand subscription when you take the course. Sign up for free at bitesizego.com/GoLand or go to jb.gg/GoTime.
Now turning to you, Cherry, because you also have an extremely exciting new role. So similarly, I want to start with the basics of like when we say, okay, you're stepping into this role, you're tech leading the Go core. What does that mean? Like, what is the Go core for those who might not be familiar?
Okay, sure. Yeah. In the past, we had separate the compiler runtime team. or sub team and a separate like Go release sub team. Or I think there was some time the release sub team was also known by other names such as open source project team, like or the Go OSP team, or other names. The responsibility shifts, but they mostly related to Go releases. And I think it was during the pandemic, and partly related to team member change and other reasons, we decided to form a more integrated team called Go Core. Basically consists of the compiler runtime toolchain aspects and the Go release aspects. And because that the language itself and the compiler toolchain and runtime and Go releases, they all are like in the very center of Go. Other parts like tools, IDE plugins or platforms, cloud integrations, and all other things are built on top of that. So we call the sub-team for the compiler runtime and Go releases is the Go Core team. That's where it came from, I think.
And how are you feeling in your new role? I'm going to ask you a very similar question to what I asked Austin. Like, how are you thinking about this new space that you're overseeing? What are things that maybe are top of mind that you're excited about as you're kind of a month in? Is that right? About a month in?
No, just 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Oh,
or 3, if you will, because Austin was out for the week before the actual transition.
Okay, so truly top of mind as you just have started. What are you thinking about? What are you excited about?
As you know, it's a very new role to me, and I'm still learning, and there's a lot of things for me to learn. So basically, just learning. Even the basic operation in that role is something I need to learn. I've been learning. So, but I'm also like excited and feel pretty good about the new role. And, we, as Russ mentioned, I really like that thing too. It's like, this is a tech lead service role. So I really like to find a way to serve the team and the community, in the best way I can. And as you know, the core team, as well as, the community, have lots of talented engineers and contributors, and we never lack of ideas. So they're just full of ideas. So I'm here I'm very excited to work with all of the engineers and contributors to get excited about their ideas and talk about designs and try to integrate all the nice ideas, fancy ideas into a coherent part. And that's what I'm here for, I think. And right now, on top of my mind, is just we want to make sure the transition is as smooth as possible, and want to ensure the Go 124 release will be great. And that's the most important thing. I guess the long term, as we all know, that Go is not just a language or the compiler toolchain, it's a full platform. So I'm really, I would really like to see more integration with the other parts of, the platform, like tools, security, and even AI, how all these parts and change go and how this evolves.
I must say, for 2 weeks in, I love the vision, and I'm excited to see it as it develops past 2 weeks. If you have this vision and this this outlook after 2 weeks, let's check in a couple months. I'm ready.
Thank you.
And then last but certainly not least, I know, Russ, you said that you're kind of around, you're going to be supporting this transition, but you also have a new role that I want to hear a little bit about. So I'd love to hear about kind of what you're stepping into. And I'm going to ask you the exact same question, like what you're excited about, what's top of mind for you in kind of this next chapter of your time in the Go space.
Sure. So we've been trying to figure out what we should do with AI, like what sort of new capabilities the recent AI advances, and in particular large language models, sort of unlock. And one of the things that I think really helps, so, there's a lot of, I think, unwarranted optimism about exactly how is amazing things that LLMs will be able to do. And, maybe they will and maybe they won't. But at the moment, I think that the main strength is I saw an article maybe a couple of years ago now that was sort of framing them as kind of a word calculator, right? So like computers are number calculators, but LLMs are really kind of word calculators. And so in the situations where you have a lot of words and you want to deal with them, having a word calculator sounds like a good thing. And so one of those times is when you're doing software maintenance and you're dealing with other people, right? Like they're speaking English. And so having some sort of word calculator that can, do things with the English text sounds like that would be a win. And so in particular, we're looking at what we can do to help open source developers with running their own open source projects. And we're using Go as a testbed for that. And the goal is really to try to help automate away the stuff that no one really wants to do, like triaging, the basic triage of issues, or figuring out where the duplicate issues are. And so like right now we have a bot that in the Go repo, when you post a new issue, it looks up using LMs and vector databases other issues that are very closely related. And it posts a list of at most the top 6 or 7, maybe 10. I forget exactly what the cutoff is, but there's a score cutoff of how related they have to be. So sometimes it'll post nothing. And sometimes it'll say, hey, these 3 issues look very related to this issue. And originally we were looking at that for automated duplicate detection and just closing a duplicate. But it's very hard to tell the difference between this is a duplicate of the issue or yes, this looks like exactly the same thing, but you thought you fixed it and now it's happening again. So maybe it's different, right? Like you can't tell the difference between those from the reports. But just even pointing out, hey, look, these other issues might be related has been incredibly helpful because you get an issue that comes in and you're looking at it and you didn't even know about this other issue that someone else took care of. And you say, oh, wait, that does look like exactly the thing. In fact, the bug fix for that one has a subtle mistake in it, and that would cause this new one, right? Like seeing those connections is really, really helpful. And in particular, having this kind of database of the context for the project and having the computers take care of saying, hey, this looks like related context that you should know about. That turns out to be incredibly helpful because once the project gets bigger that you can't keep it in your head. Like none of us can keep Go in our heads anymore, all the stuff in the Go project. Having that kind of automated retrieval is actually just incredibly helpful. So we're looking for how can we use LLMs and sort of recent advances in AI to help with that kind of stuff, the stuff that people aren't good at and that honestly isn't that much fun, right? Like groveling through all the issues to try to find the related issues is not something I want to spend my time doing. Whereas, we're not that interested in having the AIs write all the code because that's the fun part. Right? Like, why would we take away the fun part? Let's take away the not fun part. So that's the basic idea of the project. It's just like, let's figure out how we can point AI at the stuff we don't want to do. And also, just learn a bit about what AI can do. Like, to me, it's sort of still a bit of an experiment to just see what are LMs actually good for, because, none of us really know.
That's awesome. I see. It feels like you're actioning under the new Austin's regime of funness. So I love to hear it. So now I want to hear from kind of all of you a little bit about, now we've talked a lot about kind of the new roles. We've talked about your past, like what you're excited about. I would love to hear from each of you, like what part of Go or what thing about Go have you just been itching to solve and itching to improve that now you're in a position to maybe, make it happen? So maybe we can start with you, Austin.
Well, I'll give sort of 2 answers to this. One is, as I've been sort of closing out my previous role as Go Core Tech Lead, one of the problems that I have been trying to solve ever since I started on the Go team was garbage collection. It takes a lot of resources to do garbage collection. And a long time ago, I did this microarchitectural analysis that basically showed, the performance of garbage collection is like down here. And there's some sort of like theoretical sort of speed of light limit on garbage collection that's way the heck up here. And there's no way that we could actually get garbage collection to be that fast, but surely we can close this gap more than we do right now. And like I said, I did this analysis years and years and years ago. And every once in a while, I still bring up the slides that I made from that analysis. And I'm like, we still have this giant gap. So I've been experimenting with this new garbage collection algorithm that, as tech lead, you draw on all these ideas, right? And so this draws on ideas from lots of people on the team. And I sort of found a way to glue them together in a way that we hadn't thought about before. And I'm calling this new garbage collection algorithm Green Tea because I happened to make a lot of progress on it while I was in Japan going to cafes and drinking matcha every day. See, it all connects. So I'm still doing lots of experiments. I'm still not completely sure that this new algorithm is a win, but it sure has been a lot of fun to work on. It is very unlike our current garbage collection algorithm. I mean, from a user's perspective, it still does the same thing, but it's been a lot of fun. And if nothing else, one of the like technical things that we've been thinking about recently has been how to get SIMD, that's single instruction multiple data, into Go. And we've been thinking about SIMD for years now, and we actually have various like internal sketches of proposals and so forth, but we've never really made that much progress on it. And I believe that one of the reasons for that is that nobody on the Go core team has really done that much SIMD programming. Like, we just don't have that much in-house expertise with actually doing SIMD programming. And one of the things about this new GC algorithm is that it's built around a whole bunch of like really tight computational kernels, unlike the current garbage collection algorithm. And that means that for at least some of those kernels, you can really dive into micro-optimizing them, and in particular using SIMD. And so this has been a great excuse for me to actually learn and get experience with actually writing SIMD code. And a lot of the ideas I had about like, oh, we can expose these beautiful APIs that will make SIMD all nice and stuff have gone completely out the window because it's a complete mess once the rubber hits the road. So that's sort of the thing that I've been itching to solve for almost 10 years now, that I'm kind of trying to go out on from being the tech lead of the Go core team. And going into being tech lead of the overall Go team, one of the things that I'm sort of itching to solve is along the lines of what I was saying earlier about how programming should be fun. I believe that, several years ago, Russ started up what we called at the time the Go 2 process, although, as we know, it's still Go 1. But the key part of the Go 2 process that Russ put out there was asking people for experience reports on the big things that really caused friction in real production systems. And I think that process worked extremely well. So we got these top big issues with the production readiness of Go systems. And we've been tackling those over the past several years. And we're still not quite done with that, but we've made really good progress on that. And I think one of the things, however, that process has missed is the small stuff, right? Like, obviously, these big sources of friction and things that cause production problems are very important. But engineers are writing lines of code, right? It's all made out of lines of code. And there are all these small things on an individual line of code where sometimes you're like, why is Go making me do this? This is silly. And, like I said, at the very top, I do not want to come in to Go and start, tearing down the house. I believe strongly in Go stability, but I also believe that there are sort of small scale things we can do that will make Go more fun and ultimately more productive by focusing on sort of the micro as much as we have focused over the past several years on the macro.
Sounds like you've got your action items, and I'm very excited. I agree with them fully. I feel like that, especially the second point around really focusing a little bit on those like little more detailed things that might feel minor but are just so impactful when it comes to day-to-day programming and like engineers' lives, sitting and writing their lines of code. Cherry, I want to hear a little bit about what your kind of bee in your bonnet is, the thing that's been on your mind that you've wanted to dive into and fix or change. and that now you maybe have the leadership position, or you have the bandwidth to be able to address it or put a little bit more thought into it.
Just like Austin, I also, value a lot about stability. So I don't think I'm going to change everything and rebuild everything from scratch. But like partly related to what Austin mentioned earlier, like Go is about programming at scale. So both scaling to people and scaling to machine. And, as Go user space grows, like user base grows really, really fast, and it's ever growing user usage and needs. But, the Go team have very limited resources. Basically, the number of people on the core team basically essentially never grow, probably shrink from time to time. So it's very important to, basically build platforms that is more, capable of scaling to more people and usage, like, building tools or, APIs or platforms that, other people can build things on top of it, and to drive it to a more of a solution that is very important. And then also, I'd also like to, solve the scaling to machine part. Go is about, scaling to machine, and it have really nice built-in concurrency support. But, there are, as the hardware trend grows, like more and more cores and, larger and larger machines and many, containers and services, it's kind of at to a point where we've seen more and more, scaling problem too. So, scaling to machines, basically handling large number of core counts or very large memories or other things. I'd like to have the opportunity to solve this problem as well.
No, I feel like all the problems you're flagging, I think are kind of really important areas to be digging into, and excited to see as you kind of are more than 2 weeks into the role, as you're able to have that space to kind of really settle into the role. I feel like it's going to be exciting to see the things that you're doing, the conversations you're able to have with the community, and how you're engaging with these really important problems that are so important to all of the Gophers around the world. I just had one final kind of area question I want to explore with you all, which is around just that, like the community. So we are, engineers, the code is really important, but I think one of the things, certainly, that drew me to the Go community was the people, like agnostic of the language, honestly, agnostic of the wonderful things it can do and the wonderful apps I can build with it. The people made the community what it was, both their brilliance, their ideas, their outspokenness, their willingness to change, but also to have constructive, sometimes heated conversations online with each other about decisions that are made. So I'd love to hear a little bit, maybe from Austin, you first, about how you're thinking about engaging with this like deeply interested, excited, deeply invested community that we have in the Go community, and how you're thinking about that interaction in this kind of new role.
It's tricky because it is such a big community. I think the Go project has done a lot of really great things over the past several years in sort of growing and maintaining a really strong community. I think we have good community standards, which are very important. And I think we value a lot of different forms of community, which I think is also important. Just like bringing lots of technical perspectives to a problem is important, I think bringing lots of perspectives to a community is also very important. One of the things that I've been thinking about is how to sort of reduce the barriers between the Go team at Google and the community at large. I'm frankly way less online than Russ is. And for the past 12 years, a lot of communication between the Go team at Google and the rest of the world has been through Russ. I would love to widen that channel and sort of democratize it more, which I think would be both good for the visibility of other amazing engineers on the Go team at Google and amazing engineers in the community. And I think it would also help break down more of the barriers between our team and the community. I don't know what a lot of this looks like. One small idea that I've been exploring is, I know that Russ has a very popular personal blog, on which he posts sort of the more detailed internal thoughts on some of the big things that are happening in Go. Things that sort of aren't official yet or haven't been accepted yet, but we want to get more in depth in our thinking on. But I think it's great that we get that out there, but I think it's also kind of unfortunate that it's on Russ's personal blog. And so I've been thinking about how we could democratize that more to the rest of the team and also to potentially even community members, because I think there's a lot of really interesting thinking that goes on inside the team. And at the moment, a lot of it never sort of bridges that wall around the team. And I think part of that is that we just don't necessarily have a good forum for doing that. And so I would love to create a forum where just anybody on the team can say, like, these are the things that we're thinking about. It's not official yet. We don't know what direction this is going to go. We don't know if this is ultimately going to get accepted or produce anything. But, get more of the process out there in addition to the final product.
I think that's a really, really great idea. I think that I'm certainly extremely excited about that. I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, but what I'm hearing is it more of and this is maybe, I'm giving away my perception. I feel like when I joined the Go community, I think it was maybe an hour in to my first Go meetup. And so I was like, oh, do you know Russ? Do you know Rob? All these, like, there were 3 or 4 names. They were like, oh, if you don't know these people, then like you're not a gopher. Like, these are the faces of Go. Not in so many words, I will be clear. The gophers were lovely, lovely people, but they're like, oh no, these are the faces of Go. These are it almost felt like, not in a bad way, like these were the rock stars of Go.
Mm-hmm.
And there was somewhat of a feeling of, and this is where I'm going to be candid, these couple of white men who were leading Go. And I was looking around the meetup and going, oh, but this is such like a diverse, incredible group of like interesting people. And Russ, you're extremely interesting, don't get me wrong, but you see what I'm getting at. I feel like there's always been this sense of like, these are the rock stars of Go, or like the Go team even. Like you have meet and greets of the Go Time team, the Go team, which I think is brilliant. And it opens up that internal discussion of like what you all are thinking about on the Go team versus what the community is thinking about. But there has always been that feeling for me. And it's a feeling that I think many people I've spoken to also feel, that like there's this almost like there are the kings of Go, and then there is their incredible court of incredibly talented engineers, and then there's the rest of us. I know, Russ, you would never ever say that in that sense, and this is not something that has been consciously implemented, but I've certainly felt it. And it is that almost feeling of accessibility that I think you have to really be pretty outgoing to break through. I feel like the only reason I know Russ is because I was like, hello, I'm Angelica, how are you? And let's, be very self-aware of the fact that not all that many people, like not everyone feels cool about doing that. To be honest, I did it when I was like, this weird Go language. So I had no perception of the amazingness that was Russ Cox. Had I done it a few years later, maybe I would have been a little bit more quaking in my boots. But you see what I'm getting at? Like, is that something that you are also perceiving and something that you're trying to shift away from, this kind of unintentional, I will say it, hierarchy of gophers?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's a little tricky. We absolutely 100% do see that. It's not intentional. I think it's an easy consequence of the way that Go is structured. Easy but unfortunate consequence. And I think we do want to break that down. At the same time, I think it's important to maintain leadership in order to maintain the coherence of Go. And so it's a difficult balance.
For sure. Don't think I haven't forgotten you, Cherry. I want to hear a little bit about you and how you're thinking about kind of pulling on the Go community. I know your new space is a space that many gophers are very invested in. They care a lot about. So I would love to understand a little bit how you're thinking about kind of drawing on the community.
Yeah, as Austin mentioned, this is a tricky and hard thing to solve. Yeah, but I also think it's very important to hear from the community and the Go users. That's what most important to Go, actually. That also bring in, ideas and opportunities that's probably very hard for us, like, people in the core team to think about. Like, we are, a group of compiler and runtime engineers. And, for reasons we think things probably differently from, the majority of Go users. They want to write Go code that's very different from what I would write for the compiler. So I really, think we should hear more from them, like what they actually want to do with Go and what problem they are actually facing and what we can do to solve that problem. I'm not sure what the actual form it's gonna take, but maybe we should just do more user studies or more QA sessions. I don't know what the form it is, but I'd really like to hear more from community and users.
And to be clear, for those who might be kind of listening to this episode and might not be quite as close to how kind of the Go team, Google, and the Go community interact, there are a lot of forums already in existence, to be clear. There's a Go developer survey that is sent out. There is a lot of open discussion forums that are out there around the language. I just think it's kind of like, Austin, you mentioned, there is a challenge that as the community expands, there are those who are extremely invested and know where to go for these discussions. Like, they know to go to Russ's blog, they know to go to XYZ issue tracker. But for more like newer gophers who maybe are not sure quite how to engage in the right way, and just given the volume of people too, I personally have like jumped on some issues sometimes and read the like 200 threads of back and forth and be like, do I really want to insert myself into this discussion? I think I'm good for now. Let me just watch it.
I feel that way often too.
But actually, that might be just something to close out our discussion with, is for kind of older gophers, newer gophers, people who want to re-engage with the Go community, watch closely as like there are changes coming down the wire, and kind of keep an eye on the wonderful work I'm sure that kind of Cherry, Austin, you're going to be doing. How can they do that? Where are the great touch points? And maybe Russ, you can mention a few, and then Cherry, Austin, if Russ forgets anything, you can jump in.
Sure. So it depends on what volume you want. Certainly the Golang Nuts email group is very high volume. The Golang Dev email group is fairly low volume, but when there are sort of technical development questions, that's kind of where they end up. You can go to our code review server, which is go-review.googlesource.com, and then you can watch every single change if you want to. That's sort of where all the kind of equivalent of the pull requests are. You can go to the issue tracker, which is on GitHub, but is also just go.dev/issue. And then the other place and so the issue tracker is also pretty high volume. Obviously, the code review server is very high volume. One place that's slightly lower volume is the proposal issue. So it's go.dev/s/proposal-minutes. It's also just issue 33502 on the Go issue tracker. And we post once a week just the list of what proposal issues are sort of have active discussion on them. And so if you want to follow along with the proposals and make sure that your input is represented there, you can star that issue, and then you'll get the GitHub mails once a week with just the list of current active proposals. And then you can go through them once a week and make sure that the points that you want to say either have already been raised or you can raise them. And that's a lower volume but kind of high impact way to be involved too. Those are the ones that come to mind. Obviously, also going to conferences, talking to people, going to meetups, meeting other people. All of these are good ways too. But those are the sort of direct electronic ones that I can think of.
And I can ping in the episode notes, if you're listening here, I can put a link to a number of the things that were just referenced, but also I will put a link to GoBridge, which is I'll ping the link to the YouTube and to the meetup page. That's where you'll see a list of global Go meetups. There's also, you can just keep listening to Go Time if you want to be engaged. And you can go to one of the many global conferences that we have. Unashamedly, I'm going to plug GopherCon in the US because it's a brilliant conference with brilliant organizers that do a really good job, I think, of structuring a good agenda. As she smiles and pats herself on the back. Thank you so, so much for spending this last kind of hour with me. It's been like truly a pleasure to get to know you, your thoughts around Go, the things that are exciting you about these new roles. And I'm sure I speak for the Go community and the Go Time listeners when I say we're very excited. We're here to support you, and more to come.
You know, every year, both the number and the scope of data breaches worldwide, it's rising. We've covered it on the podcast before, on many of our podcasts before. And according to the 2022 Annual Data Breach Report by the Identity Theft Resource Center, the number of victims has gone up nearly 41.5% since 2021. Now, it's likely that your data has been breached or will be breached sometime soon, recently, and there are hundreds of commercial databases and people search sites that hold your personal information, including mine too, and the number grows every single year. These databases include personal information, names, aliases, social security number, login credentials, your home address, your various addresses, location history. I mean, all this stuff, online activity, it's just disgusting. And this is all available for purchase by businesses and could fall into the hands of the bad people, the criminals. I know I personally have gotten my information stolen because I get crazy phone calls for court cases and filings and being served at my home. They know my home address, they know my phone number, they know my name, and they act as if they're from my county, right here in the United States, in my county, not my city, but my county. And it sounds legitimate. Now, the good news is you have the right to protect your privacy and request that these data brokers delete the information they hold about you. But the bad news is just that it would take you years to do it manually, just doing it once. And you need to do it again and again and again every few months as these data brokers continue to collect your information and your data and create new records. They just won't stop. They're like a virus, keep spreading and doing. It's just nasty. And this is where Incogni comes in to put an end to this problem. Since many data brokers continue to collect your information even after they've removed it, they also take care that your data stays off the market by conducting repeated removal requests. This means that whenever a new record pops up on a data broker site, Incogni will automatically take care of it. That's what makes their yearly subscription especially advantageous. They will continue to proactively protect your data as long as you use the service. And the whole process is automated. All it takes is 3 easy steps. Number 1, create an account. Tell them whose personal data they'll be removing. Number 2, grant them the right to work for you. They will contact data brokers on your behalf to request your personal data to be removed. And 3, kick back and watch them work for you. They will handle any objections from data brokers and keep you updated on their progress every step of the way. So maybe you're ready. Maybe you're just done with all this stuff and you're like, yes, give me Incogni. Go to incogni.com. That's incogni.com/GoTime. Make sure you fill out your correct information as it will help you take back your personal information from these third parties. The only way they can help you is to fill it out correctly. Again, incogni.com/GoTime. That's incogni.com/GoTime.
Now we're going to move over to the more spicy part of the episode that Russ knows I love, which is where we talk about unpopular opinions.
Unpopular opinion. I actually think you should probably leave. Unpopular opinion.
So, who has an unpopular, spicy opinion?
I have one that maybe is unpopular outside of this room.
Okay.
Which is that the best place to be a software engineer in the United States is the Boston area. I was looking around and Cherry, Austin, and I are all in the Boston area, and so clearly that is right.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why? I feel like you need to validate this statement.
It's just empirically true.
Statistics.
So we're moving away from this king model, but yet the reason why it's the best is because we're here.
That's exactly right. We don't have earthquakes, and Massachusetts is not going to fall into the ocean.
Okay. I will think about that point. I might not agree with it, but I will accept it. Cherry, Austin?
Okay, I can go one. I usually don't have that many. I have an unpopular preference, but opinion, I'm not that opinionated, but I do have one. Like, you were mentioning like pull request. I find the pull request workflow, like GitHub pull request, is very hard to understand. It's very hard for me. I think, Garrett's CL model is way better. It's just way easier to do.
+1.
Can you say a beat more? Like, is it the order of steps? Is it the what specifically is the thing that annoys you?
Yeah. So if I just want to send a one-liner patch to some project I've never worked on, and I have to first fork their projects into my own GitHub page and create a branch and make commits to my branch and then send a pull request. At that point, I'd rather just mail their send an email saying, this is one-line diff. I want to make this one-line diff. Right? Yeah, why do that? And I find it's really hard.
Okay, so for any of you who work at GitHub, get on it. Austin.
Yeah, let's see how quickly I can get myself canceled here. Tech debt is good, actually, if it's managed intentionally as an investment.
Mm-hmm.
I think our industry has developed a very visceral reaction to tech debt, but I like to view tech debt as a form of debt. Just like a financial investment, some tech debt has a very low interest rate. And that's probably a good investment because it meant you could shift engineering resources to higher value work. In fact, fixing that tech debt may actually be more expensive than paying the low interest rate on it because you'll probably introduce bugs. Of course, tech debt that has a high interest rate is a problem. This is tech debt where it regularly causes bugs, or it's in code that you're actively changing and it's impacting your engineering velocity and honestly happiness. But because I believe tech debt can be good, I also believe that it's important to create a culture where people actually feel empowered to pay down tech debt when it becomes a problem, which can be really tricky because usually when tech debt goes from being low interest to being high interest is exactly when you're trying to build something new and get something out the door. But I think it's important that you have a culture where it is okay to fix things when they need to be fixed and to leave things alone when they don't.
So you started that statement and I was like, oh, I don't know about this. But now that you've explained it, I don't know how unpopular it's going to be. Well, I really appreciate the time. My popular opinion is that we need a gopher drinking matcha that is light green and has maybe some lovely cherry locks of green hair. And maybe it's like 1 foot on top of a crown to symbolize the new era. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope to have you on again soon. Have a wonderful rest of your days, your week, your month, your year, your many years, continuing the beautiful development of Go.
Thank you very much. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Go Time. We appreciate you spending time with us each week. If you haven't yet, check out Changelog News. It's the industry's only weekly newsletter that's also a podcast. One reader calls it so good, he considers it a competitive advantage. Read and listen to the latest issue at changelog.com/news. Thanks once again to our partners at Fly.io, to our beat freak, The Goat, Breakmaster Cylinder, and to our longtime sponsors at Sentry. We love Sentry. You might too. Use code CHANGELOG. Save $100 on the team plan. Too easy. That's all for now, but we'll talk to you again next time on Go Time.